May 24th, Thursday, I was already reading and learning information on the girl known as Anne Frank and her suicide that happened recently that I don't want to talk about too much, but the information is out there. Um, Instead, I want to talk about the other big hit that day when I was already not too happy from coming home from work, checking Facebook, and hearing about that, but checking Twitter, and the very first thing I saw, I can't tell you if it was because it was the most recent tweet or is because of Twitter's algorithm making it so high up there, but the first thing I saw was TotalBiscuit tweeting the day that his birthday and the day he died, saying "Rest in peace" with a picture of TotalBiscuit. Right under that was his wife on her Twitter saying that he is dead. This is not a drill. Talking about how she's going to miss him and stuff. The thing is that TotalBiscuit's actual Twitter is ran by his wife, so both those tweets were from her. And if anyone's going to know if the state of TotalBiscuit, it's going to be her. And the podcast, they recorded a podcast like maybe a day or two ago, and then it was finally up on YouTube that day. It was up on YouTube hours before he died. And so for a lot of people, that last podcast, I mean, that is literally the last you were going to see of him. He was recovering from a surgery. If any of you guys really don't know the state TotalBiscuit was in, if you've just been under a rock, he's had cancer for years, and he had been fighting it for a while now. And I kind of want to talk about some things regarding TotalBiscuit because people who want to be contrarian are always going to be annoying and say things just to be contrarian, and there's no virtue in it at all. What you need to look at, especially if you're trying to be an actual critic, if you actually are serious about criticizing things, you need to look at everything with a positive outlook, and that by all means does not mean you like everything. It actually means you give everything a complete and total fair chance without writing it off, and then you weigh everything and decide if it's good or bad. And so if we're going to critique the most popular YouTube critic about video games in ever, if we're going to critique him, then he deserves to have an actual fair shake. Because some people people love this meme of calling TotalBiscuit an asshole. And they say, yeah, well, I agree he was an asshole, but we shouldn't make fun of him for dying. We shouldn't celebrate his death. He was not an asshole. That is already a subjective term, but if you don't like one of his opinions on some game or something, who fucking cares? Why would you call someone an asshole over that? Well, there's some other things. There's other things he did. And I don't even want to talk about them until I talk about the good stuff, but let's just get it out of the way right here, right now. The most major criticism of TotalBiscuit was that he supported Gamergate. Now, Gamergate is the new 9/11 buzzword. It has been for a while now. Anytime someone talks about Gamergate, everyone just rolls their eyes because they just don't want anything to do with it, especially now that it's been dead for years. But it keeps getting brought back up. It keeps getting brought back up, and people keep saying it was never about ethics in games journalism. That's what they say. When they say it was never about ethics in games journalism, they're literally talking about Gamergate. Because TotalBiscuit was one of the people saying, we should talk about ethics in games journalism. Because, see, this goes this whole big thing. Gamergate all started because a woman known as Zoe Quinn uh, got favorable coverage from people who she had relationships with, and I won't get into all the details, but she had relationships with people, and she got favorable coverage. All of this would have been pretty much okay, especially considering it's not like they gave her. It's not like they reviewed Depression Quest and was like 10 out of 10, 10 out of 10. They just like randomly like spitballed it out there, being like, oh, you should also check out Depression Quest. But they didn't say, what they didn't do is they didn't say, made by my friend, or made by my lover, or made by my former lover. They didn't say any of that, okay? So they never disclosed the relationship that these people had, and you're supposed to do that, okay? That is very unethical, and that's not just in games journalism, that's in all of journalism as a whole. And the problem is that games journalism as a whole was doing many different unethical things. And I mean, oh my god, the problem is I don't even want to like pull all this old history back up. But at the time, if you were paying attention to Gamergate, there was so much information coming out against these people, all of these journalists, and the whole history of the whole thing. There's so much that went down, and the problem is that people want to simplify Gamergate and say, oh well, everyone who was in favor of like Gamergate and used that Twitter hashtag, they were all sexist, they were all anti-SJW, blah blah blah. Now, the reasons, what do we have to say like that TotalBiscuit is actually like a sexist piece of shit? Well, the evidence is that he doesn't like Anita Sarkeesian. That's basically literally everyone on YouTube. All of the game journalists love Anita Sarkeesian, and everyone on YouTube is just like, I don't want to talk about her. They either don't want to talk about her, or they just slam her. Like, no one likes her. And, you know, even people like Boogie, who we all love Boogie, doesn't really like her. You know, he met with her, he actually talked to her, and he tried to get his opinion across, but he, you know, disagrees with her on a lot of things. A lot of us do. I disagree with Anita Sarkeesian on a lot of things. And the thing about Anita Sarkeesian is that she had some good ideas, and in a sea of bad ideas and bad information that is not entirely accurate, that she's totally spinning with manipulated game footage, and game footage she just straight up stole from other people. And, you know, she had this big Kickstarter and didn't even deliver on, like, the majority of the promises, and couldn't even capture home game footage. She had to steal it all from YouTube Let's Plays. So, it's very frustrating. I don't think she is good at what she does. I think the thing is that one of her good ideas, probably the most sane thing she ever said, the game industry has really latched onto that, and even TotalBiscuit agreed with it, which is we need more diversity in video games. And a lot of people kind of took this as, like, if you disagree with Anita Sarkeesian, you're saying we don't need more diversity in video games. And TotalBiscuit was like very upfront about how not only did he want more female characters as protagonists, not only did he want more people who are characters who just weren't straight white males with short brown hair, because that's how bad it got. Okay, in the late 2000s, we were at a point where every video game had, on the cover of every video game was a man who was white with short brown hair. It was ridiculous. Like, every character looked like fucking Nathan Drake, and we needed to break away from that. And some people were like, it's not even a race issue. For me, I do believe it's important to have characters who represent other races and other sexes. You know, so it's like, and possibly sexual identities too. I think that is important. I think we should strive to do that, as long as we do it as long as we still make our games have good stories and are awesome. And I think people who don't care that much about racial problems and sexism problems, I think that if they play a game that is good and has the main character is a black girl who's gay or something, they'll be like, well, the game's good. At the end of the day, the game's fucking good. That's what really matters. So that's what I'm saying. I'm saying, yeah, we should have more diversity, but let's just make sure the games are still good. Because, like, sometimes people would point to Remember Me and say, Remember Me did horrible. No one played Remember Me. Oh no, Remember Me. It's like, well, Remember Me wasn't a very good game, okay? Remember Me looked amazing, and I was super excited to play it. And then it was just really bad, okay? And it was really a letdown. So, and honestly, same with like the Tomb Raider game. I really don't like the new Tomb Raider reboots. They're just not good, in my opinion. The story, and the characters are all confusing and not great. And I'm just kind of over this idea of characters who just kill hundreds of people and then they just shake it off like they have no PTSD or anything, but yet Laura Croft was still traumatized over other things, not the fact she like just kills people. Like at this point, she should be like a cold-blooded killer, and like she should start to act more like how she does in the PS1 games, where her feelings are slowly fading away. And that could have been an interesting story premise, but instead they wanted to make Laura Croft a more vulnerable and relatable character, and it didn't mesh well with being this cold-hearted killer that she is. She kills so much in that fucking game. Okay, so that's my problem with Uncharted as well. They just, it just doesn't mesh with the story. But that's a huge tangent. My point is that me, TotalBiscuit, and a lot of people online totally agree that we should have more diversity in games. And the problem is that when people are defending Anita Sarkeesian, that's the point they always bring up, because that's her strongest point. All the other stuff, people are like, nah, they don't really talk about it that much. That was the one thing, like, all the people making video games were like, well, we're not going to make your game. Everyone, like, she's like, describes every game needs to be this perfect game. And no, there's no other games. They have to all be this. And everyone's like, no, we're not doing that. But we will look into possibly having more female characters and more characters of color. And we're starting to get that. It's still not quite there yet. And I think every time a new game comes out with a new character who's like a white male, it's super unappealing to just about everyone at this point. Most of the games that sell now are like licensed properties or like games that are sequels. You don't see, and usually when there is an original new game, they have custom characters. And I think a lot of people, men and women, enjoy just customizing their own character. These are all topics that TotalBiscuit would discuss himself. These are topics he interviewed the story writer for Tomb Raider, the game that I didn't like, and they talked about, she herself said she wished they didn't have to kill so much in the game, so that way her story would have made more sense. Because a lot of people really liked the story, and that was one of the bigger criticisms, is that, how Laura Croft is beaten and battered, and also at the same time is a killing machine, and it doesn't really mesh with what's going on. So that's not entirely her fault. The game's director should have tried better to get everything, working. But Tomb Raider also was very successful, and people really liked that game. So it's like she should be pretty happy with what she got accomplished. And yeah, he interviewed Stephen Totello from Kotaku, where he basically addressed a lot of TotalBiscuit's complaints about the unethical practices at Kotaku, because Kotaku and a few other websites were part of the bigger problems. TotalBiscuit also... Well, so then there was Ben Kuchera, who ran a Polygon, and those guys were always going after TB, always trying to slam TB, and try to inform everyone that he was a misogynist and a racist. And Polygon is straight up SJW game reviews. They completely admit it. They said, hey, we're going to be progressive. And TotalBiscuit even said, like, well, that's fine. You can do that. The problem is that, like, it was right after Gamergate is when Bayonetta 2 came out. So, everyone was, like, looking at, like, oh my god. And Bayonetta 2 was getting, like, 10 out of 10 reviews. Everyone was loving it. And the lowest review it got was a 7 from Polygon. And, like, the only thing they put in, like, the flaws area was that they sexualized the main character too much. And then he, like, went on this rant talking about, like, how they sexualized her. And the guy who wrote it was exposed for having a subscription to Suicide Girls. So it's like, bro, you like it. Like, you like it. And not only that, but you're completely missing the point. You're just trying to suck up to people. And you don't realize why other people are giving the game a 10 out of 10 is because Bayonetta does not disrespect women or create a negative stereotype of women. She actually owns her sexuality pretty well. and it's very different from how like some other game would like make a character sexual against her will or something of that nature. So, and I know like we're talking about a lot of weird political stuff here that I normally wouldn't talk about, but these are just like some opinions of mine. That if you're a hardcore SJW, then you'll probably be mad, but everyone else will probably hear me out, so I don't care. But and and I never wanted to get political anyway. But the thing is that I think you can be neutral on this topic because the claims against Total Biscuit and the claims against video games like Bayonetta, I think actually are just flawed claims. I think they're false. I think they're lies, and so I would like to expose the truth and give people proper analysis of these things so that way they don't get swarmed into this weird political sphere and start hating something based off of their bias, and not even and then they don't even realize like they're just fear mongering and they don't even know what they're talking about. And so a lot of people went after TB. I saw a tweet the other day, a little bit after he died, about how he was not only was he sexist for not liking Anita Sarkeesian, which almost everyone on YouTube doesn't like her for proper reasons. And the fact of the matter is he agreed with a lot of the things she said anyway, so I don't know why that matters. He didn't like a person. He liked the idea. I don't like I don't know why that does I don't know why that matters. And then it's just stupid. And then that he supported Gamergate, which he didn't support anything other than proving games journalists were being unethical because they were being unethical. I mean, and he has if you are liberal, you might be familiar with the David Pakman show. I don't know if SJWs watch anything like that. I don't know, but I do know that if you're progressive, you might know about shows like Young Turks, David Pakman, Majority Report, and on David Pakman's show, he interviewed a lot of people during Gamergate. He interviewed Milo, he interviewed Christina Hoff Sommers, he interviewed lots of controversial people. He interviewed Brianna Wu, all these controversial people who were willing to come on. Total Biscuit was one of the people who came on. Total Biscuit, straight up, he controlled the conversation and made it about, he was honest with who he was, and he made it straight up about video games journalism. And he talked about how, video game companies will try to give you presents. They'll buy you computers, they'll buy you laptops, send you games for free, invite you to parties. They try to swoon you. They advertise on your website. They do all these things. And he's like, and I avoid all of it. And I see people who don't. And he's like, and I will know when they're not avoiding it. Because he's like, when Shadow of Mordor, the Mordor game, where the Lord of the Rings game. This was a while ago, obviously. So the first Lord of the Rings game, what happened was, it was like they would only give you an early copy of the game to review it if you said certain things in a favorable way. And Total Biscuit himself said the game is honestly good, and they shouldn't have done that because I had to refuse the offer. And everyone he saw playing the review copy, he knew for a fact that they were under those circumstances. They had to say favorable things about the game, or they would not get the review copy. And, so he was exposing people even on YouTube. Even YouTubers who were just trying to make money. He exposed them too, because it's all unethical. And that was what Total Biscuit was about. He was about being the most honest, ethical person he could be. He was about... And so when people say like, "Oh, I'm painting him as a sexist because he was a fucking sexist person," and it's like, no, but look, what he's doing is standing up for what's right. He's being a pure and honest voice in a sea of bullshit liars. And in that sea of bullshit liars are people who are trying to say that they are morally correct and that they know they have more insight on this issue of sexism than he does, and he must be a sexist because he's saying that they are unethical. This has nothing to do with... These things are not connected. Now, Gamergate may have had some other issues that were on the sexist side. And I will be the first to admit that, especially once Milo Yiannopoulos joined the scene. There was a lot of weird debates that had nothing to do with video games, because a lot of the people who were coming to join the Gamergate side of the debate were conservatives, and they were hardcore. They were the early signings of the alt-right. It was like the alt-right before the alt-right was sort of a thing. And I mean, that's why Milo and Breitbart really led the charge on that. And that's not how Gamergate started. They came into it a little bit after a lot of the stuff was already going on. And, it's sad because it's like, if the conversation didn't have to be about sexism. Most of the people who cared about Gamergate, like I saw a lot of, I don't know if you guys are familiar with the Best Gamers. Ding Dong from Oniplays used to be a big part of it. Used to write it and run it and edit it, and people like Rockhawk64 was on it and stuff. So if you're familiar with Oniplays, you might be more familiar with the Best Gamers. But the Best Gamers, and I'm pretty sure this was just Ding Dong on the Best Gamers Twitter, because he's not hid his opinion on stuff like this before, but during Gamergate, he was very vocal talking about how shitty games journalism is. Very vocal about it. And, a lot of people were being vocal about it. The thing is that people just didn't want to, a lot of people didn't want to get involved because the accusations and being aligned with people who they disagree with politically, but certain people had things to say. And it is weird how a lot of people who came out defending Gamergate, who are now still kind of in that Gamergate circle, the anti-SJW crowd, a lot of them do say weird things sometimes about hating, like how white people have it bad and there's no such thing as white privilege. People will say stuff like that. And that's why TotalBiscuit, he came on the scene very early, right when Gamergate was first starting, just to say, hold the phone. You guys can't seriously say that video games journalism isn't ethical, or you can't say it's not unethical. You can't say it is ethical just because the people calling you out are sexist. You guys are actually unethical. And so that's the thing. There was this weird culture battle going on during Gamergate. But I really think the games journalists did everything they could in their power to add fuel to the fire. They did everything they possibly could have done wrong. They acted like children and trolls. People were doxing each other on both sides. It was just a fucking chaotic mess. It was a very low point in internet history. And while I wish I could say we learned from it, we really didn't, because both sides are still spewing out this bullshit towards each other. No one's really come out and said, oh, games journalism was actually unethical. But, Stephen Totilo, he said it in the TotalBiscuit interview, like, yeah, we did unethical things, and we are changing them now. And it's like, I wish people would just look at that and be like, yeah, here's the guy. He's the one saying it. A lot of people in the games industry they fucking hate TotalBiscuit. A lot of people in the games industry fucking hate him. And they say stuff like, oh, because of him, I was afraid to post my game here, do this, talk about my game there. He didn't do anything. All he would do was expose bullshit. That's literally what the thing is that TotalBiscuit would stand up for what's right. And that's why some people will post stuff. So there's the people. Oh, there's one more thing. Someone tried to say that TotalBiscuit pulled out his stock on Intel when Intel was saying they wanted to hire more women. TotalBiscuit's wife managed his stocks, so TotalBiscuit's wife pulled the stock. It had nothing to do with TotalBiscuit himself, and he even tweeted that he thought it was cool that they were partnering with companies to hire more women, and that Intel's a smart company and they know what they're doing. So, he straight up said, he thought it was cool that they did that, and the fact that they pulled the stock had nothing to do with him. That was his wife. So, and it probably had nothing to do with the women thing either. So it really is a stretch. It really is people who already have a bias of trying to claim he's sexist, trying to prove to everyone they're like conspiracy theorists. They sit in these dark rooms and they're just like, I know he's a sexist. He's not. He not only does he have Dodger on the show, on his co-optional podcast show, but then he has people on all the time who are women. And they talk about these issues. They talk about these things. And TotalBiscuit usually sounds like one of the more reasonable people. And a lot, he will play devil's advocate, but almost never if it's something he straight up disagrees with. Like, he'll do it just so he can make a better point come out. He's being very ironic and sarcastic when he does play devil advocate anyway. So it's like, I don't know where people are. Well, I know why people are calling him sexist. They are actually just crazy conspiracy theorists. And the problem is that when people hear that and they don't know everything, they actually do start to doubt things. They start to look into it, and they don't hear from the other side. They don't even try to hear from the other side. And so if you're like me and you listen to the Cool Optional podcast, you'll hear all this shit about him being sexist, and you're like, no, shut up. Like, no, he's not. Shut up. Like, not even a hint of it. And even the things they come up with are just usually lies and manipulated truth. It's really annoying. The other thing he gets is he gets hated on by the shit posters. Now, shit posters have no political alliance. You could say that some people who are shit posters are the alt-right. If we want to bring up the alt-right just because we're bringing up SJWs and those are the two fringe groups, that's fine. But the thing is that I'm sure the alt-right hates him because people call him SJW all the time. Because that's what it is. When you're online, you get hated by the SJWs, and then you get hated for being an SJW. Just for having reasonable points. Just for using logic over aligning with a political party. If you just try to pick the most logical ideal, people will fucking rain hell upon you on both sides. And that's what TotalBiscuit did, so that's what he got. He got trolled on by both fucking sides. However, these people who were the shit posters, the reason why I call them shit posters is because the popular thing they would do is they would repost this tweet of TotalBiscuit saying he was talking to someone and he was saying, get cancer and die. And the thing is that that's ironic because he died from cancer. So when they post that, the thing is that you have to say what is the meaning behind that. Are they just saying it's funny, or are they trying to say he's a bad person and that we shouldn't mourn his death? So that's the question you have to ask. Is like, and some people will say stuff like just throwing this out there, and if you say just remind, like, when he died, if you're saying like, hey, I'm just gonna throw this out here, are you saying, like, are you calling him stupid? Are you saying he's bad and deserves to die? What are you saying exactly? And the problem is that it always comes off like you're trying to say that, he was an asshole and deserved to die. Which is, when you say that, you have to remember that, first of all, he has apologized for saying that, because that was like an 8-year-old tweet. He apologized for that a long time ago. And there was a period of time where people would say, you're cancer, this is cancer, get cancer. People still say it all the time. It's a popular thing. And so when you say something that's really popular 8 years ago, I highly doubt the people tweeting that have never told someone to get cancer before. I highly doubt that anyone who's tweeted that out or posted that on Facebook or anything has never told someone that they are cancer, or the thing they like is cancer, or that things are cancerous. People say that. It's in our common language. So if you're trying to be a shit poster and then say, this is offensive, he said an offensive thing, it's like, you are just as bad. Like, by posting that, you have proven that you have nothing to say. And that's the whole point of trolling. And trolling is like, you're just being a dick. And people don't realize there's no virtue in being a dick or being a troll. It's just for your own self-amusement, which is like the lowest, most pathetic form of comedy, because no one laughs along with you except for other trolls. And nothing you say makes sense. And so the moment and a lot of people who troll, they are saying, like, they're hiding behind, like, it's just a joke, bro. It's just a prank, bro. But the reality is that people only troll people they don't like. So really, they've already revealed that they don't like that person for some reason, but they're not going to actually say why. And then they come up with these points that are really bad. Like, what? TotalBiscuit's what? Like, and so it's like, when they do that, it's like, okay, you're just as bad as what you think TotalBiscuit is, and TotalBiscuit's not even like that. So you're literally, just by saying TotalBiscuit was like this at one point, you're literally worse. Like, you're worse than them. You're worse than the example you're bringing up. So it's just, it's not a good point. Every time I see it, I cringe, because I'm like, oh no. Like, I forget, like, 16-year-olds are on the internet, and they think they're smart, and they're really dumb. Like, ugh. Like, yes, the other thing, this is another thing with 16-year-olds, is the whole our trap's gay thing, which wasn't even TotalBiscuit. It was actually Jesse Cox. What happened, which is, he's also on the Co-Optional podcast. What happened was, Jesse Cox was doing a panel at his own convention, CoxCon, which is a small convention. It's only for, like, really hardcore fans. And someone asked him if traps were gay. And the reason why this was controversial was because he just kind of squinted, looked around, and said, like, next question. And TotalBiscuit on the H3H3 podcast actually explained this, where he said, basically, a lot of people who are running the show behind the scenes were telling him not to answer the question, and telling him to move on. And Jesse Cox didn't even hear the question. He was just like, I think he just heard, like, something about being gay, and he's kind of give this weird look, like, are you trying to be funny, or? And so Jesse Cox was, like, really confused. Everyone, all the people, the staff running the place, who have nothing to do with TotalBiscuit or Jesse Cox. Those are the people just running the show. Yes, it was CoxCon, but they were using this building already. So the people who are running the location were like, don't answer that. And so he's like, I am not answering that. Let's move on, next. Because if you acknowledge too much, it creates a problem. The problem is that the microphone picked it up perfectly, so everyone could know that they asked Jesse Cox if traps are gay. And the thing is, you don't even... The thing about CoxCon was that guy was not a real-life troll. That guy just thought it would be funny to ask that. He wasn't actually trying to piss off Jesse Cox or troll anyone, because at the time, nobody knew that would be a triggering bad thing. So a real troll would do it again. A real troll would go to the next CoxCon, or go to any convention they possibly could, and ask Jesse Cox if traps are gay. And that's what people would do if they were actually trying to be trolls. And again, this isn't really that funny, and it's just annoying, because you're just trying to be an asshole, and the reason why you're being an asshole is secret. So people are like, well, I don't know how to handle you. Clearly you're just trying to make noise, so I guess I'll just not pay attention to you. So, basically, though, our traps gay question, a lot of people who think this is edgy now are either very mentally stunted because they have not progressed since 10 years ago, but this meme is like over 10 years old. I remember seeing this meme before Facebook had memes. That's right. There was a time where you did not shitpost on Facebook. You shitpost on 4chan, and I remember seeing people talking about traps on 4chan way before. And this was like, people would talk about traps on internet forums, but it was not for the public eye. This was for the people who really had no lives, who were sitting around on their computers too much, online too much, and that's what it's supposed to be about. So to try to claim it's actually funny, it just kind of shows just it shows that you're just young, or that you just don't know, or that you just are living in the past. Now, our trap, is it transphobic? Like TotalBiscuit said, it's calling someone a trap transphobic. I mean, like, this is not a political YouTube channel. This is a video game channel. So I'm not going to be mad if people talk about traps or make jokes at the expense of trans people. It doesn't really bother me that much. But to say it's not offensive, to say that people are not allowed to be offended, I disagree with that. A lot of people who say, like, oh, what, boo-hoo, you're offended, big deal. But what you don't understand is that there's a difference between an SJW who is so offended that they want to change the world because so that way they're not offended anymore. There's a difference between that and then just going up to someone and then yelling a slur at them and then saying, "Why are you offended? Why are you offended?" And it's like, because you're saying you hate me, and it's like, you're not. It's like, yeah, no. If someone calls you stupid, are you saying you're not supposed to be offended? I mean, obviously, you're being offended is a part of life. I get offended every day, and what I do is when I get offended, instead of writing an angry letter or trying to ban video games or some stupid shit like that, I usually just unfollow that person, or I turn the channel to something else, or I play a different game, whatever. If someone is saying something, if I'm sitting there and I'm hearing someone spout something that I disagree with politically, I'll just be like, well, I don't like this person. I'm probably not going to listen to his stuff anymore. Like, probably not going to keep following this guy because he's just saying stupid shit. That's bullshit. So I don't want to hear about it. So that's the thing. So just running around being offensive for the sake of being offensive, there's no virtue in that. Whereas when people say, like, I'm offended by a violent video game, and you say, well, I like it, so can I have it still? And then you just go away, and they say, no, the world has to cater to me being offended. That's the difference. That's when it's annoying and bad when people are being offended because they're trying to ruin it for people who aren't offended. That's not the American way. That's not even the way of like the Western world. So that's the difference. So you're allowed to be personally offended. Things are going to offend you. Everyone gets offended. So just saying like you should never be offended. It's like no, you should never be. You should be offended, but the way you handle being offended should be that you walk away. So yeah, because yeah. So those are the enemies of TotalBiscuit. They are the shit posters. They are the extreme SJWs. And most of them, almost everything, basically, what TotalBiscuit stood for was logic and reason and always trying to be objective and be as honest and fair as possible and to be as transparent as possible. And because of that, the people who didn't like him were the most illogical groups of people. The mindless shitposting trolls that you're not supposed to feed, and the extreme fringe SJWs who have completely taken over the comics and the video game journalist industry. You know, they've just completely... The SJWs have really become a huge growing point in games journalism. The SJWs are everywhere, man. And and they're very illogical, so they're going to hate on TotalBiscuit. And it's funny because it's like if you just look at what TotalBiscuit actually says, it's like, oh, this guy seems really reasonable. Oh, he's saying he just disagrees with Anita's message about video games being sexist as a whole, and that every video game should feature non-sexual female characters, and female characters should be the main characters, and and games shouldn't have violence in them. She's like, no, video girls shouldn't be violent. That's a male fantasy for women. So it's like, do you want every game to be Animal Crossing or what? Like, or do you want every game to be Portal? What do you want? Like, like what? So yeah, it's like maybe she should consider that other people like violent games, and that we can possibly consider maybe toning certain things down, maybe not sexualizing women who are being violated against their will. Maybe we could start, just making sure that when women are sexual, they are owning it and they're being powerful. Or it's in like a romantic situation, like in Witcher, where the women are just like, and again, they're really powerful, but like, they own it and they're like, yeah, we'll fuck Geralt. Like, we'll fuck Geralt. Like, so, Like, I don't. To me, it's like there's good examples that exist now for sure, and we possibly didn't get there without Anita's help. But it wasn't directly Anita's help. It was indirectly Anita's help because people started talking about this stuff more because she had like one good point, and she kind of glosses over that good point in her videos anyway. That's not really the focus of her videos. The focus of her videos are about how video games as a whole are violent towards women, and video games as a whole promote violence towards women, and that video games as a whole promote that women are sexual objects. And it's like, yeah, no, I don't disagree with like maybe some extreme examples, but if we're talking about the majority of games, no, like no, the majority of games actually already have done this since the Super Nintendo days and even the NES days in some extent. So it's like, no. Um, so yeah, I mean, and video games are always going to be a reflection of the times. And right now our movies are way more progressive. Our books, our games, our TV shows, everything, our comics are extremely progressive. So almost everything now is very, very progressive, and it's because the liberals own Hollywood and the conservatives own the White House, and so there's a huge culture clash going on right now. It started with Gamergate. I think Gamergate was the first time I really saw so many people say like they straight up just hated the way things were going. And that's right around when we started seeing more of these changes come up anyway. And that's also when I was exposed to how SJW, the video games journalists, were at the time, you know? And, yeah, and that's also when they really paraded Anita Sarkeesian, and she was on the Colbert Report, and all of that stuff happened. And she couldn't even really make a good point. Anita Sarkeesian and Zoe Quinn went to the UN to complain about harassment against women, and Anita, of course, had to drop this little tidbit of information that harassment is also being told you suck every day. And it's like, well, people who disagree with your opinion are disagreeing with your opinion. So you should, it's like, that's why people, yeah. So, I mean, the other stuff that happened, sure. Like, I mean, no one deserves to get death threats, but we all get them, but no one deserves it. No one deserves to get trolled and harassed. That's another thing. But even TotalBiscuit was being trolled, harassed. Boogie was doxxed, and someone told Boogie that they were hiring a hitman for his house, and what happened was they got the address wrong, and they actually sent a hitman to his neighbor's house. But what really happened was when the doorbell rang, it was just a pizza guy. No one ordered that pizza. The pizza was ordered by whoever was doxing them or whoever was buying a hitman or whatever. But they literally just ordered a pizza to his house. That's all he did. Which is still fucked. Like, that's not a funny joke. People do these things they think are funny. And they're just really bad people. And that is if you're like a thinking person, like if you care at all about anything, but not to get on too much of a tangent here. But my point is that TotalBiscuit, there's going to be a lot of people talking about the importance that he did for the industry, involving esports, involving lots of different Blizzard games like WoW, Hearthstone, and StarCraft. There's going to be a lot of people talking about the good he's done for games journalism, the good he's done for helping channels grow and fighting against bullshit. And you should go and absorb that information. What you shouldn't do is listen to people who don't know what they're talking about try to claim he was a bad person. I don't know how it has spun to this proportion. I don't know how it got this popular to hate on him. But if you're like me, you know all the players, you know all the people who were doing this and that during Gamergate. You know who spawned up out of it, who's become important since then. And if you're your own thinking person, you can come up with your own people to follow and like. I like people on both sides politically. I like people who have very different gaming opinions, who are people who would probably hate each other in real life, but I can watch both of them, you know. So, you know what I mean? If you ask me who's my favorite YouTuber, I'd probably say like Video Game Donkey, or yeah, probably just Video Game Donkey. I feel like he's got the perfect channel. So, like, I don't care about, like, yes, I follow political stuff, but that's not what's important to me. What's important to me is comedy, video games, stuff like that. So, and Total Biscuits had a very interesting podcast with the Co-optional Podcast. It's probably one of the best podcasts I've seen that's not like just a straight up comedy podcast. And I would recommend watching some if he ever had a guest on that you liked. Sadly, now it's too late to be a fan and watch regularly. And, you know, what Total Biscuit's done for the industry is irreplaceable. And that's why it's so sad to see him go. And that's why I will stand up, defend his legend. And I will say that if you want to mourn him, I already tweeted this, but if you want to mourn him, my best advice would be to just keep being logical, keep being thorough, be honest, stand up for what's right, and in the face of people, in the face of adversity, I'll say, in the face of conflict, don't let people bully you. Don't let people tell you what to do. Stand up for stand up for yourself. Be a badass. A lot of people like Dodger and other people who Total Biscuit worked with in the past have all said that they would motivate them and give them the courage to do what they want to do and say what they need to say and stand up for themselves and be proud of to be themselves. You know, he was a very positive influence on a lot of people's lives. And we could take that. I think that's, there's a lot about Total Biscuit who was inspirational. Just the fact that he was fighting cancer for so long was inspirational. And when people want to try to put this negative spin on him, I've already said all I'm going to say about it. But it's just the fact that, the people who are saying it are prominent people in the video games journalist industry. People constantly are bringing it up. Game Informer made sure to mention that he was pro Gamergate and didn't like Anita Sarkeesian. That's all they said on it. And it's like, the games journalists are talking shit and throwing shade on the dead guy who used to expose them on the regular basis. Like, maybe that's why they don't, And he would say when he was alive, they don't like me, and he said, like, fuck Ben Kuchera. That's like on my Instagram. It's an old video of Total Biscuit saying, fuck you, Ben Kuchera, during the podcast. Because Ben Kuchera just kept going after him. And it was like, stop, you're wrong. You have the facts wrong. And you're not doing it to make a difference. You're not doing it to change someone's mind and to fight racism. You're doing it for your own personal gain. You're calling someone a racist and sexist just so that way you can be the hero. And then your friends will like you more. That's bullshit. Ben Kuchera is a bullshit piece of shit. Fuck that guy. Fuck Polygon in general. They're terrible. The reviews are always bad. Remember when Polygon reviewed Rock Band 4? They went to an event that had Rock Band 4, and the guy was like, I don't even like Rock Band. I had more fun the whole event. I had more fun going and drinking tea next door and listening to better music and not just pressing buttons. Could you imagine pressing buttons? And it's like, dude, you review video games. Why'd you even go to the Rock Band event if you don't like music games? And then come back and then just be like, I'm not going to tell anyone about the actual game and new features. Instead, I'm going to talk about how I don't like it very much. And it's like, what the fuck? What the actual fuck? Do your job. All you had to do was go there and tell people what the fuck was going on with the new game. Instead, people who read Polygon, all they get is meh 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 meh. It's like, dude, shut the fuck up. And then the guy who reviewed Bayonetta, that guy who likes the guy who likes Suicide Girls but hates Bayonetta because it's only good and real. Even though a woman designed Bayonetta, and there's plenty of women who actually work on Bayonetta, because in Japanese games they actually have a ton of women who make who work on video games. That's such a normal regular thing there, and then they want to talk shit on it. He also reviewed Codename Project Steam, the 3DS game made by the Fire Emblem team that was sort of like an XCOM game. and he also reviewed Star Fox Zero, and both reviews, he said the games were so bad that he couldn't get past like the first levels. Dude, is there no one working at Polygon or something? Is there not a single person at Polygon who actually knows how to play games? Like, you send the guy who doesn't like Rock Band to talk about Rock Band, and then he's like, he couldn't even pay attention. He hated it so much. He was so offended. He was so, and this is what I was saying about being a good critic. When you're a good critic, you take things in, you don't write them off, you try to examine them, and then you try to say what's good and bad about them. And then you could also throw in your personal enjoyment. You could also throw in, like, I didn't like it this much because this conflicted with this, you know? Like, a good criticism of a game would be like, the game is got great RPG elements, but the gameplay itself is really stiff, and because it has real-time action, I would prefer a different game. But because of the game's overall whole experience, because it delivers so much on this front, it's still good for people as long as they don't care about these bad combat sections. You know, or they could say, like, this game is a light RPG, and it's really fun, but because it's a light RPG, there's not as much customization options. So if you are into hardcore RPGs, customization, this game's not for you. But if you want to experience the RPG experience with a lighter note and with really good action, then this is a good game. Those are good. That's what a good critic would say about stuff like that. What a bad critic would do would say, because this game is boring, because I personally don't like this game, I cannot tell you anything about it. It sucks. It sucks. And it's like, okay, well, everyone else likes it but you, and you're just saying it sucks because you didn't enjoy the first hour of the game or whatever. Star Fox Zero is a 3-hour long game, and the guy from Polygon could not figure out how to play it. he fucking could not figure out how to play the game. He was like, the controls are so bad that I could not play the game. And it's like, dude, it's a 3-hour long game. Star Fox Zero, I've beaten that game. I've unlocked every level. I've beaten the living shit out of Star Fox Zero. I played it multiple times. I played the co-op modes with my friends after I beat the game. I did some of the speed run, trial run shit. That game's fun. The controls are not bad. The controls are new, different, and possibly not ideal. You know, a lot of people would probably rather just play Star Fox 64. But I would say that if you could get past the controls and learn the difficulty curve, there's a lot of fun to be had. And my biggest gripe with the game would be that it's like a 3-hour long game and it was $60. And that even though they added co-op mode is super fun, the game could have used a lot more levels and a lot more challenge mode stuff or something to make the game a longer experience. Instead, they sent the game with 2 games. They gave you a bonus game. And I didn't even play that bonus game. I wasn't into it at all because it was like this weird puzzle game that I just didn't care about. So, you know, to me, those are flaws against Star Fox Zero. But that guy didn't talk about that. He couldn't even get past like 2 levels of the fucking game without being frustrated. It's like, did you even try? It's your job to beat the game. You're just like gonna quit and say the controls are that bad? And the thing is, when you say stuff like that, you're gambling that everyone else is going to agree with you. And that is arrogant as fuck to say a game is so bad that people won't even get past the first level. And it's like, no, if anyone rents that game, they will get past the first level, and they'll probably beat the game. It's not a hard game. It's actually pretty easy. And this is the same guy who didn't beat Project Codename Steam. He's like, no, the game's so annoying, I don't like it, I'm not playing it. And it's like, then why are you reviewing the game? This is also the same guy who did the demo of Doom, and everyone made fun of how bad he was at Doom. So it's like, clearly there's this guy his head is so far up his ass, and I'm not saying his name for a reason, but his head is so far up his own ass that he can't even beat, like, basic easy games. He can barely play first-person shooters. I don't know what games he even likes or what he's good at. I just know that to him, because he doesn't have to be objective, he can just review a game, be like, it's terrible. It's a bad game. People will not like it. I don't like it, and it's sexist. And it's like, okay, well, it's like you didn't even talk about the game. You just said the controls are so bad because you didn't even play it. It's like you're getting paid to not even play games, dude. Like, You're living the dream and you're not even doing it. Like you're getting paid to play games for free and then talk about what you thought about them. That's what we all do with our friends anyway. And you're such a bad critic that you can't even fucking say anything about the game. And then you wonder why TotalBiscuit is the top curator on Steam. You wonder why. Well, it's because people are sick of a lot of the shit that video game journalists pull. And one of the things they also pull is, confusing review scores and confusing review opinions, where games that are totally mediocre and bland and boring are getting high scores because they're part of a popular franchise and because they're getting really swooned over by the game companies. It's like, dude. So, yeah. If you want to mourn TotalBiscuit's death, speak your mind. Don't hold back. Be logical. Stand up for what's right. Those are some of the inspirational lessons TotalBiscuit I've absorbed from him. And these were things that I already had within me, that it's always nice to see a shining example. So in your darker days, you always have that example. And to see him effortlessly be so badass is inspirational. And that's what I want to take away from TotalBiscuit. I think he's one of the best, most important people from YouTube and from like video game culture on the internet. I think he's done a lot of good things. And I'm sad to see him go, but we all knew this was a possibility. And I'm going to miss seeing the Co-optional podcasts. I'm going to miss seeing just like PC reports, because he would talk about everything you could ever possibly want to know about the PC port of a game. And so I really appreciated that for games where I was kind of iffy on it. So yeah, it sucks. His death is terrible, and the state of video games journalism is still shit. And there's still shitty people out there trying to be assholes, so what can you do? But I'm going to end this one now. I hope to get back to talking about other things. I kind of want to do a full-on review of Dragon Ball FighterZ, especially that we're on the eve of the new DLC characters coming out, and I'll be streaming the day they come out. And I also I still need to talk about God of War. I'm not going to review Deadpool 2 because there's no point. If you're interested, you should just go see it. It's a good movie, and it's about as good as the first one. Whereas when I reviewed Infinity War, I felt like I needed to talk about it because it gave me mixed feelings, but overall I really enjoyed it. And I even thought about reviewing the Guardians of the Galaxy 1 and 2 just because I love them so much. But I'm going to go see Solo, and I will probably have to review that because that's a controversial movie that I think people are going to want to know a real opinion on it. I might need some days to think about it, but I have lots of plans for things that I want to talk about and review. I'm just excited for Thursday. I'm just fucking excited for Thursday when we get the new Dragon Ball Z characters. So, until then, guys, I'll see you guys later.